Amara was a simple girl from a modest background when she met Ugochukwu, a wealthy and powerful businessman. His charm, charisma, and promise of a lavish life swept her off her feet. The proposal came as a surprise, but she accepted without hesitation, believing that the life she had always dreamed of was finally within her reach. But amidst all the grandeur, Ugochukwu was distant, and his eyes often seemed to hide secrets he wasn't ready to share. The lavish wedding was followed by a honeymoon in exotic locations, but Amara couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about her new husband. Little did she know, the truth would soon unravel, forever changing her life. As the days passed, Amara settled into her new life of luxury. The mansion, the staff, the private jet, it all seemed surreal. However, Ugochukwu's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would often disappear for hours without explanation, his eyes dark with worry when he returned. At first, Amara thought it was due to the pressures of his business, but when she found an old photograph hidden in his study, one that she wasn't supposed to see, it only deepened her suspicions. The man in the photo wasn't the charming man she had married, but someone she didn't recognize. Ugochukwu noticed her curiosity and became defensive, but his irritation only fueled Amara's desire to uncover the truth. Late one evening, Amara followed Ugochukwu as he left the house under the guise of a business trip. Her heart pounded in her chest as she discreetly trailed behind him in the family car. He led her to a secluded mansion on the outskirts of the city, a place she had never seen before. She parked at a distance, barely able to keep her composure as she watched him enter the mansion. When a shadowy figure stepped out, Amara's stomach churned. This wasn't just a business affair. The man she had married had a secret life, and whatever it was dangerous. The next day, Amara confronted Ugochukwu. She demanded answers, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and anger. Ugochukwu initially tried to deny everything, but Amara pressed him, recounting the photograph, the mysterious mansion, and her suspicions. Finally, he broke down and confessed. Ugochukwu revealed that he wasn't just a businessman, he was involved in illegal dealings that he had kept hidden from everyone, even her. His wealth wasn't earned through legitimate means, and the photograph she had found was of him with dangerous people from his past. It was a life he had tried to bury, but now, it was catching up to him. Amara was stunned by the revelation. The life she thought she knew was a lie. Ugochukwu, with tears in his eyes, pleaded with her not to leave, but Amara could barely look at him. As she began to process the enormity of the situation, a phone call interrupted her thoughts. It was a man with a deep, cold voice. He warned Ugochukwu to stop hiding from his past and to pay what was owed. The call was brief, but it sent chills down Amara's spine. The threat was real, and it wasn't just about money. Ugochukwu's dangerous past had caught up with him, and now, it was going to threaten their marriage. Amara's world seemed to be crumbling around her. She loved Ugochukwu, but the man she had married was not the one she had thought he was. The weight of his dangerous secret pressed heavily on her heart. Could she stay with him, knowing the risks? Was her love for him enough to overcome the fear of the unknown? Amara's decision would determine the future of her marriage. But the more she thought about it, the more she realized that Ugochukwu's secrets weren't just his to bear anymore, they were now her burden too. Despite Ugochukwu's pleas, Amara decided to stay, hoping they could find a way out of his past. But the deeper she got into his world, the more dangerous it became. He introduced her to people she never wanted to meet, people whose names were whispered in fear. She learned of the enemies he had made, and the deals that kept him on edge every single day. The once beautiful mansion felt like a gilded cage, and Amara wondered if she was ever truly free in this life. It wasn't just about the money or the luxury anymore, it was about survival. The first betrayal came when Ugochukwu disappeared for days without telling her where he was. Amara was left in the dark, wondering if he was in danger, or worse, if he had betrayed her trust. She searched for him, contacting his business associates and friends, but no one seemed to know where he had gone. When he returned, he was cold and distant, as if nothing had happened. But Amara could tell something was off. The trust between them was starting to erode, and the fear of the unknown only made it worse. Was he hiding more secrets from her, or had he truly put her in danger? One evening, as Amara sorted through old boxes in the attic, she found more pieces of Ugochukwu's past. Among the papers was a journal, one that had entries written in his own hand. The journal spoke of deals, blood debts, and dangerous alliances that had been formed over the years. As she read the entries, she felt a chill run down her spine. Ugochukwu had been living in a world where trust was a luxury, and betrayal was a constant companion. Amara realized that she was now part of that world, a world that might swallow her whole. Amara's love for Ugochukwu had kept her from leaving, but now, the reality of their situation was sinking in. His past was a looming shadow, and no matter how much she tried to ignore it, it affected everything around them. As the days passed, the tension grew. Ugochukwu's enemies were drawing closer, and the danger was becoming real. Amara had to decide whether to fight alongside him or to walk away before it was too late. The life she once dreamed of seemed like a distant memory. Would her love for Ugochukwu be enough to protect her from the consequences of his past? In the weeks that followed, Ugochukwu introduced Amara to a man named Chidi, a well-known businessman in the city, whose connections seemed to be both legitimate and dangerous. Chidi had the power to protect Ugochukwu from his past, but at a price. He offered his protection, but warned Ugochukwu that it would come with a high cost, one that Amara would not be prepared to pay. Ugochukwu, desperate to keep his family safe, reluctantly agreed. However, Amara could see that Ugochukwu was burdened by this decision. The more he became entangled in Chidi's world, the further they drifted from the life they had once envisioned. The danger was growing, and Amara felt like she was slipping further into a world that wasn't her own. As Amara tried to adjust to the new reality of their life, she discovered that Ugochukwu's ties with Chidi ran deeper than she had initially thought. One evening, while going through some documents in their office, Amara stumbled upon an old contract. It detailed a series of deals between Ugochukwu and a shadowy figure, someone whose name sent a cold shiver down her spine. The figure was known for dealing with violent criminals, and it appeared that Ugochukwu had been involved in the same dangerous world for much longer than he had let on. The more Amara uncovered, the more she realized that Ugochukwu had made dangerous choices, ones that were now threatening to destroy their marriage. The threats against Ugochukwu escalated. Strange men started showing up at the mansion, staring at Amara with cold, calculating eyes. Late-night phone calls turned into menacing messages. It was clear that the danger wasn't just to Ugochukwu, it was now to both of them. The once safe, luxurious life Amara had known now felt like a ticking time bomb. As the walls closed in, Ugochukwu became more distant. The man she had married was slipping away, consumed by the very word that had promised to protect him. Amara knew that if they were to survive, they would have to confront this together, but the truth she had discovered about his past made her wonder if that was even possible. One evening, as Amara sat in the study, Ugochukwu returned home, visibly shaken. He confessed that the stakes had risen higher than he had imagined. The people from his past were closing in, and they weren't interested in negotiating. Ugochukwu had received a final warning: leave the country or pay the price. The weight of his decisions was taking a toll on him, and for the first time, Amara saw him as a broken man. He promised her that he would do whatever it took to keep her safe. But Amara couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The question was no longer whether they could escape, it was whether they would survive. Faced with the growing danger, Ugochukwu made the difficult decision to flee the country. He had arranged for them to leave that very night, with a new identity and a life away from his past. But the plan was risky. The authorities were on his trail, and even though he had connection that could help him disappear, there was no guarantee of safety. Amara was torn. She loved Ugochukwu, but could she truly leave everything behind for a life of uncertainty? The fear of what might happen to them was overwhelming, but the thought of losing him was worse. After a long, sleepless night, Amara made her decision: she would follow him, wherever it led. In the dead of night, Ugochukwu and Amara fled their home, leaving behind their life of luxury. As they drove through the winding roads to the airport, the weight of their choices hung heavily in the air. The risk of being caught was high, but they had no other choice. Their new identities were ready, and with the help of trusted contacts, they managed to slip past the authorities unnoticed. As they boarded the private jet, Amara looked back at the life she had once known. It was gone. They were starting over in a foreign country, with nothing but the clothes on their backs. But even as she held on to Ugochukwu's hand, the fear of what lay ahead gnawed at her. Would they be able to outrun the past? They settled in a small, quiet town far away from the city they had once known. The luxury was gone, and the days were filled with uncertainty. But for the first time in a long while, Amara and Ugochukwu felt like they had a chance to rebuild. Ugochukwu found work in a small company, far removed from the world of crime he had once inhabited. Amara, too, found peace in the simplicity of their new life. The danger was still there, lurking in the shadows, but for now, they had a moment of peace. It wasn't the life they had once dreamed of, but it was theirs. They were starting over, one day at a time. Just as they began to feel safe, the past resurfaced. A man from Ugochukwu's former life appeared in the small town, bringing with him the threats that Ugochukwu had tried to escape. The once peaceful life they had started to build was now under threat. Amara was terrified. The danger that had once seemed so distant was now right on their doorstep. Ugochukwu tried to protect her, but the web of his past was tightening around them. There was nowhere left to run. They would have to face the consequences of Ugochukwu's choices, no matter how terrifying the outcome. In a tense confrontation, Ugochukwu faced the man who had been haunting him for years. The air was thick with tension as they exchanged words that revealed the depth of Ugochukwu's past mistakes. Amara stood by his side, but she could feel the fear building inside her. This was the moment that would determine their future. Would Ugochukwu finally be able to break free from the chains of his past, or would it drag them both down? In the end, it was a choice of sacrifice, a decision that would either save them or destroy them. The final showdown was both brutal and emotional. Ugochukwu was forced to make the ultimate sacrifice to protect Amara. The cost was high, but it was the only way to ensure their survival. As they walked away from the wreckage of their past, Amara and Ugochukwu realized that their love had been tested in ways they had never imagined. They had faced darkness, danger, and betrayal, but in the end, they had survived. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear: their love had survived the ultimate test. They were no longer bound by the past, and together, they could face whatever the future held. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, drop a comment, share with friends and family, and of course, subscribe so you never miss another African folktale story.